Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Thanks very much indeed for dialing in. My name is Gary Smith. I'm the Chief Executive of the Gary Smith Partnership. We're going to be talking today very much about the use of Salesforce reports and dashboards to generate visibility of the pipeline, visibility of the sales, visibility of sales performance. I'm going to focus on how you understand the size of the pipeline, the trend in the pipeline, but also we'll focus on very much the quality of the pipeline as well. So, you know, how you spot either lame duck deals in the pipeline, or we'll talk a little bit about sandbagging and so on, and how you spot deals that might, you know, never close and might be overinflating the size of the pipeline as well. So, welcome to the webinar. What I'm hoping to do is just scroll down a bit actually, so you can see on the next slide. There we go. So that's me on the left-hand side. The good-looking fellow on the right-hand side of your picture there is Derek Davis, and I'm delighted to say, Derek, welcome to the webinar. Derek's sitting right alongside me. That's a picture of him standing next to a petrol pump, actually. Derek is the Director of Sales Support at Gilbarco Vida Route, and if the name Gilbarco Vida Route doesn't immediately ring any bells with you, you probably almost certainly use their products at one time or another. You are certainly one of the market leaders, Derek, in the manufacture of not only petrol pumps but the dispensers and hoses and the retail equipment and everything that goes with that.
Correct.
And you've got what have you got? You've got Salesforce users in how many countries now? We were talking about South America earlier on today. So
yeah, we deployed it in Europe. We're in Southeast Asia in Singapore.
Yeah.
It's going out to India. It's also in South Africa. And the Middle East and Africa.
And you and kind of both you personally and the company are major users of dashboards, aren't you? Yeah. So
we are indeed.
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll have a lot of insight to offer as we go along. What I particularly would like you to cover, Derek, is I'm going to do in the kind of latter half of the webinar, I'm going to do something on the use of products and schedules and how you forecast. How you forecast revenue on an ongoing basis, where you have a kind of future stream of activities for repeat orders and so on,
Sure.
and you do a lot of that.
Yes, we
so
do.
so I'll ask you for your input with that as well. So so let's dive in. Derek, you obviously chip in as we go through it and so on. But this is a live instance of Salesforce. And sorry, just one other thing just before we continue. Using the GoToMeeting facility over on the right hand side of your screen, you can ask questions. We'll try and pick up some questions towards the end of the webinar. We had a few questions submitted by email yesterday just before last night, so we'll pick up on a couple of those things. And Chris, I know you're on the call and you asked us to talk about sales pipeline velocity and so on, so we'll definitely pick up on that. We actually did I got one of my guys to spend an hour or two doing a bit of code this morning, so we'll do some stuff kind of you know, more advanced, and we'll talk about things like pipeline velocity and activities, and Derek, I'll ask you to comment on activities as well, actually, because I know you have quite a bit of that. So we'll start with the simple but in my mind extremely powerful reports that you can build in Salesforce, and we'll go on to more some of the more advanced things you can do in terms of either the trend in the pipeline or understanding the quality, understanding the number of times the close date has changed, all that kind of stuff. And so we'll go sort of increasingly sophisticated. So that's how we're going to run things. I'm going to flick around in this version of Salesforce. This is a live, fully standard really version of Salesforce. It's a standard enterprise edition of Salesforce. The data it's not Derek's data. It's fictional data. We thought it best not to show anybody's real dashboards and pipeline, but it's fictional data. But all the principles are the same. All of everything that you see on the dashboard here has been created with standard Salesforce functionality. Some of the things I just mentioned there about the number of close date changes or the number of dates since the last stage change, that kind of thing, then sure you do need workflow and field approvals and so on to produce those metrics. But everything else is you know, it's all kind of standard functionality. I say we'll talk, Derek, actually about some of the code we've written for you as well. Yeah. It's tempting really to start over on the first column, because this shows what we have won So this shows, this is a standard stacked bar chart that shows for this financial year. In this particular instance of Salesforce, the financial year runs from 1st of July, and it shows what we've won. And in this particular case, it shows the deals that have been won by opportunity owner. But I'm not really going to dwell on that at all, because in most sales organisations, you know, the emotional energy, the effort, all of the attention, you know, the hard work is really not so much on what we have won. That's quite interesting, but actually it's on the pipeline. What will you sell going forward? And all of the kind of management focus is on the pipeline. So in actual fact, rather than starting on the left-hand side, I'm really going to start here in the middle of this dash. And if I really had to pick, if I had to pick one chart on this dashboard, it's a simple chart, but if I had to pick, if I just could only have one chart, then I would pick this one here. This is it's a stacked bar chart. I'm going to drill down on the report, and we'll have a look at the report as well. But this is showing, it's showing our pipeline. In this case, it's showing it by close date. So when do we think that these deals are going to close? It's showing the value of each deal, and it's showing it by opportunity stage as well. So we've enabled the hover, and I can go over and have a look at it. And just this one chart alone, to my mind, gives us a wealth of value.
Yeah, I think, Gary, if I just coming on there, I think you're absolutely right, and it's one that that we have on almost all of our dashboards. But what I would say here is that what we're finding very powerful is that you can set this up, not just, you mentioned going into the reports, but you can set up say a sales director, if he's got 3 regional teams, he can look at this dashboard just by clicking the view as functionality. He's exactly the same reports, but he goes to a region, and then if he wants to, he can go down to individuals within that region. And we've just kind of like deployed that, and that's becoming very powerful for us. And our sales leaders community are very psyched by that, and they're getting a real, I would call a real richness and value to them.
And you have essentially what is the same dashboard at the corporate level, and that then is mirrored in each of the regions as well, isn't it?
Right down to the individual sales guy.
Absolutely.
So that's, and as I say, that's a real richness that we're using at the moment and finding great benefits from there.
Yeah. And in fact, one of the challenges in any sort of multinational organisation, one of the challenges in a kind of multinational deployment like yours, Derek, is really keeping a grip on these different sort of definitions of the stage. What you don't want is 25 different definitions of the opportunity stage, because you end up with a complete hodgepodge of data here. I know there's a lot of hard work gone into kind of agreeing and defining those. Using if you've got users in different languages, for sure. I don't actually know what the word for prospecting stage is in your case, Chinese and German and French and everything else. But so you can use the translation workbench to kind of give the other language versions of that. But it's actually fun. It's only one stage value. But this chart alone shows me the state of the pipeline. In the ideal world, you'd have some sort of, I think, nice regular sort of curve up and sort of down, where we've got business that we're hoping to close in this month and future deals, but obviously life's not quite like that. I can just see on this chart actually I seem to have a bit of a pipeline shortage in January. Now I don't know if that's just because of seasonal end of year sort of impact or seasonal variation, whatever it might be, or is that just a future shortfall in revenue that I might need to address. I can also see actually, let's say my sales cycle in this business is, let's just say it's 3 months. Now we're at the beginning of October. We're on the 2nd of October here, and yet I've got a big chunk of my pipeline at the prospecting stage, and you see this very often in people's pipelines. So those deals that are in the prospecting stage at the moment, are they really, if my average sales cycle is 3 months, are they really going to go through the full sales cycle in 3 months? Or actually, should they be at a more advanced stage, or should they be further down the pipeline, and so on? So I would expect to have some deals in proposal made. Yeah, I'm hoping to close those in October. Some in negotiation, so that's good. I've also, look at this. I've got there's some deals here in negotiation in February. And this is another thing you see very often on dashboards, on when you look at the pipeline, is is it really going to take us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months to conclude that deal? Well, maybe it is, but or is that just a deal that, is there something we could do to do that deal earlier? Or actually, are those opportunities that are in negotiation in February, actually, do they belong much earlier in the pipeline, or are they really, is negotiation the wrong stage? So, that immediately suggests I'm kind of, I would want to question that. The other obvious thing about this particular pipeline is the blue colour is the prospect, the kind of first stage in our sales process. Now, just looking at that would imply to me, I don't know what you think, Derek, but that would imply to me I don't have enough early stage deals, because if when I look further out, in fact I've got more deals in some of the other stages than I have in my early stage. Now, why is that? That would strike me as being wrong, but kind of why could that be? Well, it could be I just don't have enough early stage deals, and I need to take some action, whether it's more getting out to meet with potential and existing customers, whether it's something that I need to do some marketing, whether I need to drive early stage deals. That would certainly be one message that chart could be giving me.
Yeah, I think that's right. And in that instance, I think that you would be looking to share that information in Gilbarco, as well as the sales community. The marketing teams would be looking at that, and they would be invited to respond to that in terms of we need some lead generation activity, and we can touch on how we track that activity and give you some thoughts on that. But also there, Gary, I think you touched on as well, is that we think that the timing stage is very important. Is how long has this opportunity been in this stage? We have it will vary from business to business. I'm certainly not saying that ours would be a generic one, but there would be a view that we would want that opportunity to be moved within a few weeks or days, and if it hadn't, then there would be a conversation at the funnel review process.
Yeah, and I think, and the other thing, Derek, I know that you try to sort of clamp down in the Gilbarco is this whole concept of, I don't know whether it's an international word or not, this whole concept of sandbagging.
Yeah.
Because there may well be deals out here over this period of time. It's just that they're not in Salesforce. So in other words, that there are deals that the salespeople are talking to customers, but actually they don't put them into Salesforce until they're pretty confident that a deal is going to be done. And I'll show you just in a little while a report that is very, very good at capturing that sort of behaviour. It's because if they are keeping them out of Salesforce, then you're missing out on pipeline visibility. You're missing out on future revenue.
Yeah.
Not so much you're missing out on visibility. You're missing out on management control, essentially. And your business, Derek, you're the kind of fact you want to know what you might be.
That's right, because it's Gilbarco, I guess, like many manufacturing organisations now, have to look at the lean strategy of lean production, and our colleagues in production are again they're fed information from Salesforce, and they regard the forecast as sacrosanct in terms that they then have to go to their suppliers and lay down bills of material and quantities and so forth. So very important.
And almost in your business, being 50% over your forecast is almost as bad as being 50% under in some respects. So. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a moment just to drill down onto this report, because I just want to show you a few things about how the report is configured. Because very often when you look at those, a few things really about this report and about how this is structured. So you may already be building your reports like this. If you're not, then let me just show you a couple of things. Because very often when you look at these reports, though, people build them as summary reports. Let me just go into this and I will show you what it looks like as a summary report. But often when people start to create them, they create them as summary reports. So I'm just going to quickly just change it to a summary report, and I'm going to run the report. That's exactly the same data, exactly the same piece of information, producing exactly the same graph, but it's configured as a summary report. So basically my message is, if in doubt, configure it as a matrix report. So if you configure it as a matrix report, you're going to get that easier on the eye table and a more sort of concise piece of information. The other thing that is, if you've heard me talk about this sort of before, you hear me sort of banging on about the structure of graphs and charts underneath it, and of course for reasons that I really don't understand, when you put a chart onto a report on Salesforce, and I think it's a good practice to put a chart on the report, because then, partly because I might want to see the chart again, but also I can then pull that chart directly from the report onto the dashboard, save myself a little bit of work. But very often, for reasons I don't really know, the chart by default appears above the report. Well, I've just clicked on the dashboard. I was on a graph. I've clicked on the graph. I want to go to the underlying report. Last thing I want to see is the same report, the same chart again. So put the chart below the report. I personally always enable the axis label, so you can see actually what we're looking at. I generally enable the hover. You saw me hovering over that chart as well. I also incidentally put the legend, the key. By default, the system puts it over on the right hand side, which to my mind squashes up the chart a little bit. So put that on the bottom as well, and you get a much better. So that's my point about the chart being below the report. If I click from the dashboard directly here, I'd have the chart. Well, actually, I'll just have the chart. If I want to see the chart, I can scroll down again, and of course, as I'm sure you know, I can. I might be looking at this. I'm saying, well, actually, let's have a look at our business in prospecting. So we were just talking about the lack of business in prospecting. So I can drill down on the prospecting stage. That just gives me my prospecting deals. Let's say summarised by the stage. Well, I know it's in prospecting. Let's just quickly let's change it. What should we change it by? Let's change it by well, opportunity owner would be an obvious thing. So that's who owns. See who owns those prospecting deals, or in some cases doesn't own prospecting deals. So just an easy way to manipulate the report. And I know you and your team kind of play around with that direct when you're doing your one-to-ones to
Yes.
to look at the pipeline. So
Yeah, I mean, if people are not familiar with Salesforce, Gary, this is very powerful, and again, our sales leaders community are quite switched on by this, because you can go to look at the dashboard, you can go into a report, and then you can drill down to the level of the opportunity, and then you can either with the functionality, you can put a next steps. Like if you decide the next step is that we need to go and make a visit or a presentation, that can be locked in as a task or an event, and it's locked into the system. So it is really, you get the benefits of the complete system then.
Yeah. And I know in your business there, you always when you create these reports, you always click them. You don't save it with the show details view on it, because the user can always expand the report and see the details. You always save those reports as high details. So now that's giving me some management information, some information I can work with. If I want to see the more detail, I could have clicked on a particular user there if I'd wanted to. I can go in and look at the individual excuse me, opportunities as well. So that's, to my mind, the most basic. The thing about this site is just configure it well. As I say, enable the hover and structure it well with an underlying matrix report. I'm sorry, just one other thing. One obvious thing about this chart, and this you see this kind of time and time again. This little monkey here. Now we are in it's the 2nd of October today. So this deal here, or these deals here, unless you've got some sort of Hermione Granger time turner, that deal is not going to close in September. So again, it's about having accuracy in the pipeline. Maybe that deal did close, and it should now be sitting on the chart to the left, or maybe it didn't close. It should be moved along and brought up to date. So again, I know, I think Gabako, I know that you're very hot on keeping the sort of pipeline accurate and up to date. That tells me direct that there's somebody there not keeping a deal up to date.
And that's very common, and we have some pretty simple reports that basically say you're running opportunities in your pipeline, and the anticipated close date has passed. And that is that's a hygiene factor, and you can't really have a discussion about funnel and progress in funnel unless that information is up to date. And
Indeed.
yes, our user community understand that now, and that's just that, as I said, it's a basic hygiene factor that you expect that to be minimal. There's always reasons for holidays, etc., but certainly it wouldn't be anything significant.
Yeah. So this, as I say, if I had to choose one chart just to manage my pipeline, that would be it. So it tells us about the size of the pipeline, tells us about when we should expect deals to close, gives me information about action I should be taking going forward. The chart underneath is exactly the same information actually, but this time it just summarises it by opportunity owner, and you saw me there just on the underlying report drill down and look at one particular bit of the pipeline by owner. So you say, well, actually, do I really need to double up? Well, I think it's a good idea. It just immediately tells me, who owns what, who do I need to speak to about, Andrew, those deals that are you've got 60,000 versus Katie 10,000 versus Michael. So I'm immediately going to speak to Andrew about his deals that are due to close in October. The chart underneath, I think is a useful. Funny enough, this chart actually is when people start with Salesforce. This is very often the first chart they create because it's a traditional funnel chart. It's a chart that many people will be familiar with, and I do think it's a useful chart. It's a sort of thing that's useful to look at from time to time, in my opinion. The reason is that it's actually just a static chart in the sense it doesn't show me the trend. It doesn't show me the performance over the time, but in actual fact, it is showing me something. In this case, very interesting. We spoke when we looked at the top chart. We said, well, just maybe we don't have enough early stage deals in the pipeline going forward. And when you look at that absolutely drives it home, because that's the first stage, prospecting. You can just see on the eye that you would expect in most businesses the early stage to be much bigger than the next stage and so on down the pipeline. But look at that, we've got 190k in the prospecting stage. We've got at least kind of an extra 50% in the investigation, and then it's sort of diminishing and perhaps in a way that. So that's really just driving home that I don't have enough early stage deals in the overall sales pipeline if I'm going to. If I make the assumption I need 3 or I need 4 times my early stage deals to make my figure in 3, 4, 5 months time. So that's just another way of looking at the size of the pipeline and understanding where I might need to take some action. That's all about the size of the pipeline. This table on the chart is actually also just taking the core pipeline data. One of the key things in many businesses is, it's just everybody knows who your top customer is, but once you get down to a third, fourth, fifth, well, who's our fifth best customer or who's our fifth best prospect? Well, this is really what this is telling you. We've just used the standard function just to concatenate this. The table just show the top 10. You can see that. Well, actually, if I'm the VP of Sales or the Director of Sales, who should I phone up to go and have lunch with? Well, I can see actually in this case, Wanstead Pills and Spas, they've got best part of 50% more pipeline than the next customer, and I can see that those customers ranked there. That might be one opportunity, might be 10 opportunities. We don't directly know from this report, but I can then go down to the underlying chart. And right at the bottom there's Monster Pills and Spas, and in actual fact there it is, there's our little 20k due to close in September, but you can see that actually, well, we are hoping to do deals pretty much continuously with them, in fact, all the way up until the new year. So that would be my first port of call in terms of customer relationship and and focus attention. And this particular chart here is an example of conditional highlighting. So we've just set it so that just to make it easier on the eye to draw the figures in. The chart over the table over on the left hand side shows exactly the same thing, actually exactly the same principle, just for deals that we have won. So who are our best customers so far this financial year? So again, just to help focus attention on the most obvious prospects and the most obvious customers. So we're talking there all we're talking there about is how big is the pipeline? What's the size of the pipeline? But what about the trend in the pipeline? The trend in the size of the pipeline? Is the pipeline getting bigger, or is it Is it shrinking? You know, all the politicians are telling us that the economy is improving. Well, is the size of our pipeline increasing? And we might want to know that. We might want to know over the long term, is our pipeline increasing successively over months? And we might want to know in the short term as well, is the pipeline increasing over a matter of days, or is it increasing over weeks and so on? And these two charts here give us that information. Now, you may well be looking at this chart and saying, well, actually, the size of the pipeline has remained exactly static over the last 4 months, and indeed, in this particular instance of Salesforce, it has, and that's because we loaded some data 5-6 months ago, and we haven't fluctuated the size of the pipeline in that time. But if you looked if it was live, active, constantly updated data, this chart is telling us what's the size of the pipeline. So what's that total pipeline figure? What is the value of it on the 1st of July, 1st of August, 1st of September, 1st of October, etc. So very often you can see a trend in the overall size of the pipeline. So that chart runs on the 1st of each month. It's a standard, it's an underused but standard Salesforce chart. It's called an ASAP chart.
Yeah, Gary, if you come in there, I think what you just said is quite right. I mean, I think it was you that introduced this to us about 18 months ago, and this has become a very much looked upon metric in our dashboard, because I think there tends to be a focus on, you know, what's in the funnel, when's it going to close, what's, you know, and the size of the funnel is. But this tells you. And again, you know, our colleagues,
tells you whether we're doing the right things.
In terms of the whole marketing and sales process, and if it shows you that if that process is doing what it's supposed to do, which is systematically introduce to the Salesforce new opportunities, or introduce to the organisation new opportunities that are going to be the platform for reaching the targets that everyone tends to have. So. Yeah, we look at the trend of the pipeline. In fact, on ours, it's on a weekly basis. So it's that. We need to get that focused on it.
But it's funny you should say on a weekly basis, Derek, because the chart underneath tells us, in this particular case, the way I configured this report is this actually tells us on a daily basis. So you can see, just in preparing for the webinar, I actually did change some deals and fluctuate the pipeline. So you can see over the last 4, 5, 6 days how the pipeline has increased over the last few days. However, you can run this exact same report. It's called an historical trends report, and you can run it for the last 5, 6 weeks as well. So it would show you know exactly what you're looking for, really, which is that, you know, how is the pipeline changing in the longer term, but how is it changing in the short term as well. In fact, we do have some customers that do run that. They run one monthly, one weekly, and one daily as well. You might want to see the impact of any marketing activities you're doing in this overall size of the pipeline. So again, you know, so those two charts are telling us about the trend in the size of the pipeline. Let's come on to the quality of the pipeline as well, because very, very often the size of the pipeline is overinflated, and it's overinflated for a bunch of reasons. It's overinflated partly because salespeople are optimists, and they genuinely believe that the deal I've had open since the day I joined the company is one day going to close, even though I've had it open 2 years. And you know, it's giving me an overinflated sense of the pipeline. I think the other reason is that for overinflation of the pipeline is that there's a lot of management focus on the size of the pipeline. So, you know, closing out dormant deals, closing out lame duck deals is not particularly conducive to relieving that management pressure. So keep them in. So very often that, you know, when you actually drill down and you start to look at it, the pipeline size is, you know, when you look at the realistic deals in there, they contain a number of unrealistic deals, which of course has all sorts of impact in terms of, from a management perspective, well, how do I know, how can I take effective action if I don't have an accurate view of the pipeline? Because the other reason that happens, of course, really through overzealous management. You know, if you do give somebody a hard time every time they set a opportunities closed lost, then you're driving that behaviour that overinflates the pipeline as well. So it's a sort of combination of things really. But the question is, from a management point of view, how do you easily get information on, so whether you call them lame duck deals or whether you call them dormant deals or deals that are in the pipeline, but come on guys, just realistically, this deal is never going to close, is it? What you don't want to have to do is trawl all the way through the pipeline looking for them and inspecting every deal to see what it is. So here are some ways to understand that. In fact, the simplest way to get that information is this chart here, because it's very easy it's extremely easy to create. The chart we looked at earlier on showed me the total pipeline by close date, when I think it's going to close. But this chart shows you by created date, when were these deals created. So I've carefully made sure that I'm only looking at open deals. But if my sales cycle, if let's say my typical sales cycle is 3 months, it's quite reasonable to expect a fair bit of the pipeline to have been created in the last 3 months. Perfectly reasonable, I think, to expect pipeline deals to have been created in 4 or 5. Some deals will take 6 months to close. Maybe some deals will take longer. But when you start looking at deals that are a year old or 11 months old in this case, that is immediately an area to question. So particularly that one, it's in investigation. That was we've got some stuff there that's in investigation, proposal made, investigation, etc. So are these really credible deals that warrant being in a robust pipeline? Just simply creating a chart by created date is one way to easily get that information. And have a look at this as well. What's this telling us? Well, this is telling us for the top 10 opportunities ranked by the number of times that the close date has been changed. Okay, what does that mean? That means that the number of times that the close date on the opportunity has been shunted along because it's just something, the deal is just being moved along constantly in the pipeline in order to keep maintain the size of the pipeline.
Yeah, and just Gary, just coming in on this to us, this was a piece of it sounds relatively simple and straightforward, but it was always very, very difficult to track when you've got things like Excel spreadsheets. I've said in many meetings where the sales leader will say, okay, what did we say last week? And then someone forgets their spreadsheet or it gets overwritten and so forth. And we were kind of, but I personally was quite surprised how easy this was to do. It didn't require any kind of what I would call programming. It was just something I think one of the guys did on the workflow, and it's
workflow and field updates.
It's really powerful for us, this one.
Yeah, and in actual fact, I've got just in another browser, I've got open some examples from our blog post as well. So I'll just cover that at the end as well, really, because we wrote a blog post that basically tells you how to calculate that number, and it's a combination of workflow and field updates. So on this table, what we've done is we've listed the top 10 opportunities in terms of the number of close date changes. We've also got the created, in this case, the created month as well. So this one I can see was created in April. So that's whatever it is, 6 months ago, whenever it is, and it's had the close date changed 16 times, as has the last one, the second one actually. Let's just drill down to the underlying report and have a look at that, because here we can see this is the created month. This is the opportunity owner. We put a bit of conditional highlighting on the report just to make it easier on the eye, just to highlight the values. And this is at the bottom. Yeah, here we are. So look at this one here. So here's a deal that was created in November 2013. So the close date changed 16 times. So is that a legitimate deal that's going to close this month? Let's have a look. Let's just go and have a look at it in a bit more detail. That's that one. So here's the opportunity. Here's the opportunity. In actual fact, look at this one. it's going to close in November this year, so it's going to close next month. That's great, but as I say, it's had the close date changed 16 times. So I'm now thinking, well, how reliable is that date? And look at that, the number of days since the opportunity stage was last updated, 234 days ago. Now, how would that be treated in your organisation?
I think it would be treated with deep suspicion, actually. In fact,
Yeah.
we can put metrics in where that would automatically be closed. You know,
Yeah.
we would one of our sales leaders, and it was actually from the sales leader the request was, I've always been instinctively against forcing closure after a certain date. I know certain businesses do that, and it's always horses for courses, but this particular sales leader was he didn't think that was his guys were shutting down. He didn't want them to have to keep going into Salesforce, so it will close down. It will close the opportunity down. And in our deployment, Gary, it's always possible to reopen it. You know, so we're not deleting it. It's just that particular that one would be closed down.
Yeah.
And it certainly wouldn't be allowed to go into.
And even if you didn't automatically close it down like you do, it's it's starting to. It immediately tells me, hold on a minute. And if this was real, if this really was a live opportunity, like I said, I've got a product added to it, but we've got no. Yeah. I mean,
that's very common as well.
Yeah.
So
Indeed. So it's not going to close itself anyway, even if we do think it's going to close in November. So that's a very powerful way of working by exception, starting to identify those deals that are worthy of further question. Maybe it is going to close in November, but Sophie, let's have some justifications to why that is. So that's one way to really sort of pin down those deals that you kind of want to investigate further. I talked about overinflation of the pipeline. That's a very, very common issue. Conversely, the other common issue is underinflation of the pipeline. So in other words, people keep deals out of the pipeline basically in order to hide the deals, in order to protect themselves from management attention, I think is the reality. And we talked earlier on when we looked at the pipeline that showed us, what have we got that might close in 3, 4, 5 months' time. We don't seem to have very many early stage deals, and very often what you find is an opportunity comes into the pipeline and it very quickly closes, and you can gauge that metric through the age of a deal. If your typical deals take 3 months on average to close, you've got a deal that closes in 3 days, then that's one way to start to do that, and we've got that metric on the opportunity. But this is an interesting chart as well for spotting that kind of behaviour. Let's just go down to the underlying report, and I'll just explain it. So really, this is telling us for a given period of time, it might be this month, this quarter, or whatever time period we want to set. It's telling us the from stage, and it's telling us the to stage. So in other words, those opportunities where there has been a change in the opportunity stage in that period of time. So in our case, current and previous financial quarter. So there has been a stage change. What was the nature of that stage change? So for example, these deals that were in prospecting, well, obviously they can't go from prospecting to prospecting, but 6 of them went from prospecting to investigation. Well, that sounds pretty good. That's the next stage in the sales process. 2 of them went from prospecting to proposal made. None went from prospecting to negotiation, and in fact none went straight to closed one. But we can start to see how some of these deals are moving through the pipeline. Actually some of them go backwards. Look at this one. 4 of them went from proposal made back to prospecting, and that happens. Deals do flip-flop through the stage. I mean, that is just life. Budgets get postponed, buyers move on, all sorts of stuff happens, and things do go backwards and forwards through the sales pipeline. But look at this value at the top. So there's no from stage here. What does that mean? That means these were new opportunities. These were brand new opportunities introduced to the system. Therefore, there was no from stage. So 8 of them went straight in at prospecting. That's pretty good. 1 went in at investigation. Fair enough. 6 went in straight in at proposal made. So now I'm thinking, hold on a minute, guys. 1 went in at negotiation, and actually 6 went in immediately as closed won. That kind of, I guess even in real life that might be a bit excessive, but that metric is telling me about how those deals are introduced to the system, and in fact even these early stage ones, where they moved. So it does occasionally happen where, occasionally happens to us where people bring up and say, can you do some work for us starting tomorrow? It does occasionally happen, but I can tell you it doesn't happen that often. And in my experience, it doesn't happen in most businesses very often, most B2B businesses. So that's starting to tell you, where there might be behaviour that you might want to address. So it's starting to tell us, or giving us powerful information about the quality of deals in the pipeline as well. Before the webinar, we invited some questions about different challenges that people have and so on. And one of the questions was this whole area of, well, I sell a product in which the customer pays me either by drawing down products from an order, or I sell maintenance contracts, or I sell something that has some sort of recurring order value. So how do you deal with that? And Derek, I'm going to ask you just to explain why this is pertinent to your business in just 1 second. But let me just, for anybody who's not familiar with the concept of schedules, let me just very briefly explain what we're talking about here. So this is a pipeline chart. It's absolutely a pipeline chart, and I can just split it by, well, what's in the pipeline and what's in closed one, and you can see that this revenue is all future revenue. So we are here now, and I'm anticipating that I've basically taken the orders for that future revenue, but I've got a big chunk of stuff in the pipeline as well. So let me just drill down on that, and you'll see how those numbers are derived. So that's actually quite a big report. Let's just drill down a bit further just to make it a bit easier on the eye, and in actual fact just to make it a bit easier, let's take the stage category out, and we'll just put in the opportunity name as well. Now, in fact there is only one opportunity, that's good. Let's just look at this. So we've got one opportunity, so we're saying, well, we're going to get £1,000 from this opportunity. We're going to get £1,000 in October. We're going to get £11,000 in November. £1,000, £1,000, £1,000, etc., up to February. So we're saying that's the revenue that we can expect from this one deal. So let's just have a look at that deal. Where are those numbers coming from? So this is my opportunity. You can see on this opportunity there are 2 products associated with this opportunity, and I can see that one of those products has a schedule associated with it. So the price, let's just drill down on that schedule. So I'm going to go to the opportunity line item, and here we go. That £5,000, that's where that £5,000 is coming from. There's my £1,000. That's what was driving on the report the £1,000 value of those of revenue on that product. So that product line has a schedule associated with it. What we could do is go to this product line, and you can see here I don't have a schedule associated with it. So let's just quickly create one. I'm just going to do this quite quickly. When's the schedule going to start? I'm going to say it's going to start. I'm going to expect my first money in October. Am I expecting £10,000 a month, or am I expecting that value to be divided over a period of time? Let's divide it. I'm going to expect to get it monthly, and for the sake of argument, well, let's just say we're going to get five instalments. So now there's my draft schedule. So 5 times £2,000 is 10,000. Let's just save that. So then on that product, for that opportunity, that's what I can expect from my revenue. So let's just quickly, there's my report. Let's just rerun that report. So now that's been the impact on the report for that particular opportunity. And as you'd expect, I've got £3,000 per month made up of the £1,000 plus the £2,000. Now, Derek, tell us why that is relevant to a manufacturing business like yours.
If you look at, and I use the phrase big ticket, you know, and I've been in previous industries. It tends to be capital equipment. Let's just use that phrase, and the focus is on winning the deal, obviously. So the sales process, the sales activities are geared to that, and then, but basically the financial community, and this is certainly true in Gilbarco, when we embarked on Salesforce, you know, they were trying to work off of Excel spreadsheets that were geared on order intake. And just as well, I call it a bit of a horror story, Gary. I know I shared it with you before we deployed this. The whole sales team on a Monday afternoon were expected to dial in and put their forecast into the production planning system. And all they didn't do was say this is a complete order, because that was the only way the production team could see any visibility of what was happening, and it was just very, very weak and poor. What scheduling did for us, of course, is that we can actually see what the by product, what the anticipated revenue is coming through. It also works on quantity, so it was a real breakthrough for us, as well as being able to keep the focus on the close date as well. It's when the opportunity.
So you want to track both how the overall deal is progressing, but if you sell £100,000 worth of petrol pumps to a major oil chain, they might be going through a kind of station refurbishment or something.
That's exactly what happens.
They don't want them all at one go. They want to draw them down.
They'll have a program, and they will say we want these pumps in 6 in September, 4 in January, and so forth. And that's what scheduling enables us to do. So there's a great richness for us as well.
Excuse me.
Just as an aside, Gary, when the deal is very new. The sales guy wouldn't be expecting, we don't really want him to spend too much time working out schedule. So the system that we have will configure, it will automatically generate a schedule. Say, this is like 4 weeks out, we might get revenue. And at a very low level, entry level deal, that's absolutely fine. And the users, the sales guys really appreciated that, because it takes down the number of clicks, it takes down the number of, you know, they have to sit in front of the CRM, and it actually is a tool that helps them very significantly. So that's worked very well for us.
In actual fact, we probably should run a webinar just on scheduling in its own right, because there can be an sophistication is in this. And in actual fact, we've created some custom schedule functionality for you that you know allows people to kind of automatically update a whole raft of different schedules. So we'll probably run a session on that in due course as well. But it's a way of, you know, if you sell maintenance contracts and the customer pays you monthly, the schedules is an ideal way of doing that. It requires you to be using products. On the other hand, you know, if you're not using products in your Salesforce, you really should consider whether you should be. In my own business, we kind of effectively only have, the only product we have is our time, but we still use products, and we still, you know, the consultant, a developer, project manager, whatever it might be, they're different products. We enter in the number of days times the day rate and so on. That gives us our value of our opportunity, and we do schedule a little bit when we think we're going to do the work, when we think we're going to charge the customer as well. So that's so really we're just kind of touching really on what can be done there with schedules. And of course, if you're using products, you might want information about the product family and so on as well. Just in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend too much time about how you can manage sales performance against targets. Just to say, there are several ways to do it. The one way to do it is using the forecast tab, which has a lot of powerful functionality, but it brings it, you know, not to be used without some training as well. We've created custom solutions for various people where we are bringing in orders from a back-end system and matching them up against target values. Simplest way actually is just with the gauge. So this is just a dashboard gauge chart in which we're manually putting in the target values, and you can put in what constitutes red, green, and amber, and so on. So that's a standard closed one opportunity report with displayed as a gauge. But I just want to go on to a couple of other questions that people have previously asked. And Chris, this is just about the question that you asked by email. You asked about pipeline velocity, and if I can just find my sample opportunity, I think this might be it. Let's have a quick look. So yeah, now the word or the phrase sales or sales velocity really can mean a variety of things. We can track the age of the opportunity. We can compare won deals with lost deals. We compare pipeline deals with closed deals and all that kind of stuff. And there's quite a simple sort of formula for that you can use to get the age of an opportunity and stop the clock when it's set to closed won. The TAS group have a very specific definition of pipeline velocity, in which they're looking at the total deals being worked, the win rate, the value of the deal, and they're dividing it by the average age of opportunities and coming out with a sort of dollar or a pound per day value, and your objective is to increase that. I'm slightly wary of that metric, simply because it kind of boils a bunch of things down into one single metric, and in actual fact, in my experience, there's a bunch of metrics that are important and are interchangeable. But Chris also asked whether we could track the length of time that each opportunity has been in each stage. So just as an experiment, we created a bit of code this morning, and actually just for the sheer heck of it, we want to track the time in days, hours, minutes and seconds, actually, just to confirm that we could do, really. So you can see that this opportunity I created earlier on, just earlier on this afternoon, and it was in the investigation stage for 46 minutes. It's been in the proposal stage for, I'm not quite sure how long now. I updated it just earlier on this afternoon, so let's just put that into negotiation and save that. And now you can see, well, actually it's been 2 hours and 40 minutes and actually 8 seconds as well. So it is possible. It's very possible to do that, and I think if we were doing this for real, we'd probably want to track those numbers you'd probably want to track it in units of a day, or perhaps hours, or whatever it might be. Now, the key question really is, well, okay, that's quite interesting, but what do I actually do with that? How do I display that? And of course, that's really 5 or 6 different metrics there that are very difficult to display just on impossible to display on a single report in a kind of matrix report and so on. So basically our intention is to create a kind of radar chart functionality, a bit like a spider's graph, where each of those values would be on the different dimensions of the chart, and on an individual opportunity you'd be able to say, well, what's the average for closed won deals, what does the spider's chart look like? For closed lost deals, what does the spider's chart look like? And for this deal, plot the values for this deal on the chart as well. So that's something that we have in mind to build and place directly in the place the chart directly in the page layout, and of course a consolidated version up on the dashboard level as well. So Chris, let's maybe have a chat subsequently about the more sort of specific areas of that. We also had a question, Derek, and I'm just moving on quite quickly because I'm just conscious of the time. Mm-hmm. We had a question about activities. Mm-hmm. How do you track activities? How do you track the relationship between activities and opportunities? Yeah. You have quite a bit of activity tracking. Just give us a quick synopsis about how you do that.
When we introduced the system, the high level emphasis was on visit activity in terms of visits per day that sales guys have made, and then obviously, and I'm sure many of the participants here, Gary, would recognise that when we did that, we got high levels of visit activity.
Yeah. And
typically it was certain accounts being visited between 10, 15 times a month, where we would expect that to be 1 to 2. And it's the classic Wednesday afternoon coffee
right.
coffee meeting. Is everything okay? When of course it is. And then it's a visit.
Yep.
What we've done is that we tend to now track how many accounts, and I use the phrase, how many doors do we go through? Because until you start seeing that increasing, what I call your market coverage isn't going up. If you just keep going to see the same people at the same time. So there is a correlation between obviously the number of visits you do and the number of accounts that you go into, or they should be. Because if there isn't, you're going to see the same people, and we have a metric that tracks that.
Mm-hmm.
And we also, what we've done, what we call, and again with our marketing colleagues, we actually map the market. We know the accounts. It's a relatively well structured industry, so we know all the players, and there's a number of industry associations that we know who the players are. So we've got them in our system, even though we're not currently dealing with them.
Yeah.
So, and then we will target who we want to go and visit, and so we use the visit activity to say, okay, yeah, but you've told us about all the customers that you've been to see, but what about the prospects? What have we got to do to get that level going through? Mm. And that's the metric that we're looking for, because we believe that the more activity that's deployed in those accounts, that's where we're going to grow our opportunities from. That's where we're going to grow our funnel. Of course, it's not designating that we will actually win the deals, because that's where the sales process is coming through. But when that's happening, the marketing function is doing its job in terms of saying, yeah, we've opened some doors for you to go and see. We've done exhibitions, we've done targeted seminars, etc., etc., etc. So in a nutshell, that's what we're looking for. And I think if you just try and fall into the trap of dividing the number of visits that you made, divided by the number of opportunities, you get that distortion, because you've really got to look at where those visits are being made, and that's what I call the quality of the visits.
And that's about segmenting your customer base and your prospect base as well. You know, are we visiting those? In your case, the major oil companies.
Exactly. It's page one basics, but with something like Salesforce, it makes it very easy to do. And if you set your reports up, and as you say, you segment your database and your customer database, it becomes very easy to do. In fact, it becomes obvious about what's going on. I like to use the phrase, if you look at this dashboard, can you see what's going on? And our senior management say, yeah, well, we're still not going to see enough accounts. And I say, well, yeah, obviously, because you can see the trend. And some of the
you can see the number, and you can also see that we wrote some functionality for you in which you can see the number of unique accounts at each salesperson. So they might have made 20 visits. Was that to 20 accounts, or was it to 4 accounts? And the reality is that you want them. If you're going to sell £100,000 worth of petrol pumps, you don't sell it in one visit. You actually do need some repeat visits. You don't necessarily want them to have been to 20 different.
And I think that's, without taking too much time, Gary, we don't want anyone going to see someone once. In the period of 3 months. Because this is a classic five visit close, if you like. So we need to see in 3 months that going up to 4 or 5. We certainly don't want it to go past 10, 15, 20. But we're looking to lock down. So and that's where we get. That's what one of the nuggets of the system is that we can see that quite clearly, and we can bring in diagnostics and have the conversation about what are we going to do about it, what do we need to do to change that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually quite a few other questions that people have asked via the GoToMeeting, which what I will do is I will answer those questions. What I'll do is I'll just build a kind of one-off web page on our website, and I'll answer those questions, and I'll send out the link to people afterwards. Charles, you ask a question that there is no obvious, there's no facility to that, but basically Charles's question is, if I've got a chart that shows my pipeline for the next 6 months, but for 1 month I don't have any pipeline, rather than it going November, what it should do is go November, January, February, etc., because I don't have any pipeline in December. Actually, you can't do that. You can only bastardize the system and create an opportunity with a zero value to actually get that to display on a chart. And Matt, your question, I'll repeat the question more fully on the web page and do a proper job of answering that. And likewise your question, Matt. And there's quite a few questions there, so I won't take too much time up now, but I'll publish something and answer those questions. If not tomorrow, then early next week. Because the final thing I just wanted to say, just by way of closing, we're quite active on our blog site. So if you want to get in touch with us, then feel free to obviously click on the get in touch button. I'll just show my contact details in just 1 second. But we are active on our blog. With a lot of stuff about well, how to identify those lame duck opportunities. So feel free and go and to look at that. I've read a blog post. This is by far our most popular blog post. That's had about 100. I think at the last count 135,000 views. So let's impart some of the stuff we've covered on that at the moment. There's a blog post there that tells you actually how to create that metric, the way you count the number of close date changes, how one on how to create the reports, how to measure the trend in your pipeline, etc. Some good practice tips for creating those dashboards. You heard me talk about one or two of those things. And actually, one of my personal favourites is this whole issue of we want to generate more. We talked about early stage opportunities, but sales complain that the quality of the leads you give us from marketing, they're all rubbish. Marketing say, well, actually, how could you possibly know that? You never phone any of those leads. So that challenge in many organisations. There's a blog post there just on that particular issue. So feel free. And there's a slideshow chart as well. We've written about it. So feel free to have a look at that. Just by way of closing, if you would like to get in touch, I'll send out an email subsequent to this. We've recorded the webinar, so technology permitting, we'll put that up so you can listen to, and I'll send out an email that, as I say, we'll answer some of those questions on our website. If you can get in touch with me, by all means do so via whatever is your preferred communication channel. So you can contact me by email, Twitter, and Google Plus, etc. Or if you can search for me I'm on LinkedIn as well, or you can ring our office number. So I feel I've used up, Derek, all of the oxygen in the room through talking there. We covered a lot of ground. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed for your help. I'm very happy to buy you a quick pint in the pub now by way of thank you. So I know you're a man who knows your way around a quick beer. So thanks very much indeed for joining me this afternoon. Thank you to everybody on the call. Appreciate your time. As I say, don't hesitate to get in touch if you'd like to have a chat. Once again, thanks very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.